Hi everyone, and welcome to AI-Native SaaS podcast. I'm Anurag, and I'll be your host for this conversation. Over the past year, there's been a lot of noise around what it means to be an AI company. But for SaaS founders and for product leaders, the real question is whether to use AI or how to integrate AI. It's how to build meaningful, scalable value with it, right? So in this session, we'll just try to unpack that question about what truly AI native means, what are the opportunities it brings, what are the traps to avoid, and we'll talk about how AI is reshaping product strategy, product design, go-to-market models, uh, right? And I'll be joined by two brilliant minds, uh, Barrie Hadfield and Leanne Bonner-Cooke. Uh, so Barrie is CEO and founder of Mindset AI. Um, it's an AI agentic platform in learning and SaaS space. You can build AI agents and you can integrate to your SaaS platform. Leanne has been a mentor to a lot of minority-led startups, startup founders, and she helps them find their blind spots and get their strategy right. So welcome you both to the podcast.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right. I dive straight into it by asking the first question. What do you understand when you hear AI native SaaS?
Leanne, do you want to go?
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, when I hear AI-Native SaaS, it's about building in AI solutions into your existing application. So twofold, really, building it into existing applications, really for me to drive improvements. And those improvements can come in terms of functionality or data-driven insights, typically. But it's about taking a piece of that workflow from an application and utilizing AI, either directly in the app or utilizing tools that already exist and integrating.
So for me, it's actually an ever evolving understanding, I'd say, because this is the first time that we're kind of going through this sort of level of transformation of technology, other than the formation of the internet, which I remember very, very well. But this is probably more disruptive. And I think my current definition, which I got from Claude this morning, to be honest, is that it's a SaaS situation where AI is not a feature, but AI is the main function, and the rest of the application are the features. So it's an inversion of what we had before, which was where AI was just a feature, maybe a guide on the side or some sort of chat interface or something like that. So I think AI native SaaS is now AI native, meaning that that's what it's about. And I'll talk later about kind of what the actual specificity of that. But I do think it's kind of a redefinition of a lot of what software is meant to do and how it's meant to actually act.
Interesting take, Barry. So just diving further into, you mentioned the functionality is not the feature, AI is the feature. Uh, is that still true from a user perspective though? For a user,
Very, very much actually. So if you take traditional software architecture that we've all been taught for the last 30 or 40 years, you've got this kind of three layers of architecture. So you've got your database layer, then you've got your orchestration layer, then you've got your presentation layer. And we were all taught that at university, and it's that's kind of what software looks at, and there's different variations of that. Now, in the last kind of couple of decades, I think a lot of that has become quite mixed up. So you've got JavaScript running in the back end, and you've got, it's all become quite murky as to where those layers actually existed. I think what's happening now, and we see with many of our customers, is a redefinition of that core architecture in a different way, and then really kind of focusing on the role of each of the layers. So the database layer pretty much remains the same. It's becoming a little bit cleverer. So you can ask the database layer a question. You could say, analyze for me which are my best customers in, whatever region, and it will go and do that work, versus you having to kind of think through exactly how to call each table. The orchestration layer is becoming a little bit clever, so it'll be a little bit more humanistic in its thinking. So it's not just run this workflow, then run this one, and then if then else do that. There's actually can be some kind of logic about take in this document, consider that, and then make a decision on what to do. But I think that the main layer that's going through a radical change is the presentation layer, the responsibility of the presentation layer. So whereas in the past, the presentation layer was just going to show pretty things for the user to push on, or be a mobile application or be a web application, now it's different. So I think the role of the presentation layer is to be the human interface of the software package. So it's got to remember who the user is. It's got to know their preferences. It's got to try and understand what they're trying to accomplish. So it has to work that out. And then it has to work with the orchestration layer in order to accomplish that. So there's a massive change in responsibility, I think, of those layers, what they should do.
Interesting. I would like to think, apart from the transformation of the user experience with generative AI, there's also an element of autonomous orchestration layer, which is taking decisions on its own, which is probably a primary characteristic of AI-native SaaS. What do you think?
I would agree with you to a certain extent. I think Barry's right, and I think there's two distinctive elements of this. So the orchestration layer is really that doing predictive analytics. So it's working away, and those use cases where predictive models are used to forecast trends, enabling businesses to make proactive decisions. So that's all happening now in the background and presenting us with that information. So it takes away our need to really think and have that expertise that's asking the right questions, because it's telling us the answers to the questions before we even think about it. So proactive rather than reactive in terms of that layer. And I think from then the user experience then is the key element of it, but that's where the real change happens. So we've got the technology and the programming and all of this, and the natural language, etc., that's being utilized in the development of things and introducing AI. But then how's the user like having that experience? So even when we talk about that orchestration there and things like automated data analysis, predictive analytics, etc., it's like to the benefit of whom? And I think that's where some of then the fear comes in, isn't it, around it's going to take my job away, and it's like it isn't really, but it's understanding that as well.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. I also, it makes me nervous when someone talks about it's just going to be magical and make its own decisions, because I think, well, that's not going to work. So, and one of the ways to maybe rationalize that is to kind of think through the kind of jobs to be done. So what is the purpose of this particular function, and what are its constraints? How can you test it as well, which is really important. So the redefinition of testing frameworks, which is within these parameters, this is a correct answer, versus the precision that we've had in the past, A plus B equals C. I have to think through your testing in a new way. But I think that's as technologists, our responsibility is finding ways to make this new magic that we suddenly have access to actually something that can function in a constrained way that gives predictive outcomes that we're still looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. But really, it's an evolution of times, isn't it? So we talk about AI as though it's completely revolutionary, and I don't believe it is. I think it's an evolution of where we've been before. And, I take that I started out my life as an accountant. It was read ledger books, then we moved to systems, and it was producing balance sheets and P&Ls for you and doing some forecasting. And now we've just done that more so, but it's on steroids. So we're for me, I think the driver is the amount of data that we can store and how fast we can process it. And it comes back to that good quality still. It's really AI is just like what we have been doing, but now on steroids. So it can just produce it a lot faster, a lot quicker. But it still is that, understanding that language and what we're asking it for is the critical element of any successful AI.
I'll pick up on your evolution versus revolution point. And you're right, it is an evolution, but it's one that certainly surprised me. And I know that, I've been in AI for the last kind of decade as such, but it was always the most boring thing you could speak about at a party. If you ever wanted to get rid of somebody, you spoke about that, which meant machine learning and those other boring things. But if you look at it like this, I think, so I see language models these days like strange databases is what they are. And if you look at database technology over time, so SQL databases, original SQL databases gave us obviously software. They then gave us the internet. They gave us, blogging. They gave us stuff like that. Then graph databases came along, and graph databases gave us a whole new genre of software. So they gave us Facebook and LinkedIn and, these amazing connections which were unimaginable in a SQL database world. And I think that language models, if you think about a language model being a strange database, where you put something in, you're going to get something back. It may not be what you wanted. It's not the precision of a different database, but it's got logic and information kind of contained within the whole logic of the world and the way that we think. I think it creates a new genre of application that was inconceivable before. And I certainly see that in many of the projects that we're involved in, people kind of really imagining applications which were absolutely unconceivable before.
Let's talk more about that. So talking about applications or specifically SaaS businesses that we're seeing emerging as a result of this revolution, right? I've come to know of quite a few which are quite interesting. So one of the favorite stories that I have is about Zendesk. So Zendesk recently shared that about 80% of their customer support tickets are being handled by without any human intervention at all, right? Which is a lot of atomicity, a lot of autonomy. Apart from that, I've heard of, you must have heard of Motion as well, right? Uh, AI employees, right? So these are kind of new ideas that have been coming along. What are some of your favorites that you've come across on the AI native SaaS side?
I mean, for me, I think some of the HR solutions are like really good, and it's those answers to those common problems, and even the fact, I'm going to do a pay rise, provide this letter, everyone in my, here's the data, everyone's going to have a 2% pay rise. It takes that administrative function away, and I like to think about it in terms of think about it in terms of your workflow and things that are time consuming. If you can reduce that time down by utilizing the AI and some of these great apps that are available, then I think it's amazing. I do think some, however, it needs careful consideration, and this is where the user comes into it, because whilst we say there's no human interaction whatsoever, it sort of like reminds me of the telephone scenario where nobody spoke to anybody and it was press 1 for this, 2 for this, 3 for this, and whilst it absolutely worked, you could say, was the user satisfied? And I think it comes back to that, great that we have no human intervention, but where's the relationship, where's the touch point? Do you feel valued, listened to, heard, or do you think, God, I'm just speaking to a robot here? So I think these use cases are amazing, but I think we have to think about them in terms of our own workflows and how we're improving that and reducing the cost through not having, through using robotics, but also what's that customer experience that we're giving. I think it's really critical. I think a lot of people are jumping on the bandwagon of replacing everything, and that human touch now doesn't matter. I believe it does matter.
Yeah.
Well, that's truly, and I think this only a segment of SaaS startups who are focusing on completely automating workflows. Most of them are actually trying to assist them in doing things. For example, there's a company I've heard of, Eightfold, and what they're really doing is they're providing a digital twin for employees. So say if I was busy or I was traveling, there's a digital twin of mine available to my colleagues, and they can just chat with that and get a view of what I would typically respond with based on my previous communication, based on policies of access and things like that.
Yeah.
Right. So I absolutely agree. I think telephone was a very good example of something that does automate a lot of the workflow, but doesn't really deliver a better customer experience.
I love it when customers or prospects have very good KPIs that they're looking to influence. So there's one we're working with who essentially arranges care workers scheduling in time around the country, and they're probably the biggest platform for that. So they have millions of users on their platform. And their kind of core API they're looking to drive is to reduce the amount of time that the users have to use their software to actually log information and stuff like that, so that they can be better at doing their job and providing the care that they do. And it's lovely actually seeing a KPI like that being important, actually less usage of our software, so they've got more time in their lives to do their real job.
Yeah, that's a good play.
And I've seen clients utilize it as well, for that whole decision-making experience. So where trends are slipping and you perhaps wouldn't notice immediately, and the AI is picking up on those, but giving you a balanced view. So be aware this is happening. Maybe you could change these things. So it's really using it as that risk assessment tool. So it's constantly doing that risk assessment in the background. That's helping you, right? That's data that is like on the forefront, doing it quicker than you can, and highlighting to you here could be a potential issue, and here's some ideas about what you could do about it. So I think that again is workflow. It's the improvements there. It's not necessarily replacing. I just think that personalization around that customer experience is critical, because what we need to look at there is in terms of driving our product development. Where are we taking the product? What's the direction? It's also about that engagement and the retention, isn't it? So we don't want people engaging with software unnecessarily. We don't want them doing repetitive tasks. We don't want them doing like non-value added things that we can get the software or AI to do automatically for them. And I think it's thinking about it like that, and really from a whole, when we look at process improvement and why we put process improvements in place, and it's really to reduce waste and save time, money, and reduce risk, then that's what we're looking at AI to do for us, I think.
Yeah. Can I introduce a question, if that's all right with you, Anurag, and I'll direct it at you.
Sure, well.
Which is this great debate about AI is taking our jobs away and we're all going to have nothing to do. What is your perspective on that?
Is that a question for me?
Yeah, it's a question for you.
Okay.
Like, do you think less people work?
I think this is an age-old question. It comes with every new technology. It came with computers. It came with machines. It came with everything. And what we have learned over the cycles of these inventions and technologies is that they don't really take away jobs. They just move jobs to jobs that are higher skilled or that are more valuable, right? And they deliver value in terms of how you do things differently, right? So there is definitely a thought process required about how a new technology would change how you do business, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it'll take away jobs. Without the internet, you wouldn't have all of the delivery services, all of the e-commerce, access to products across the world, the communication platforms that we have now, the ability to do business across borders. None of this would have existed in the way it does today, right? So I believe AI would again change the way things happen. It wouldn't necessarily take away jobs. It'll just change the nature of jobs that are done today and that will be done in the future.
So I have a slightly different view. So I agree that it won't take away jobs, but I think that the profile of our jobs is going to change. So I think a lot of low-level entry jobs will change, and they'll definitely probably go. And again, if I look at my experiences throughout my career, and so again, go back to the accountancy, started off there, you were still handwriting in books, and it was always looking backwards, and you were probably like at least a month behind the curve. So it was pretty pointless, always looking backwards. Computer technology came, you were still reviewing the month, but you were doing it a lot quicker. And now it's on the fly, it's always happening. And they're business partners, they're working with the business at a strategic level. So you've moved away from a traditional accountant into somebody that's more strategic. Now, not everyone's going to have that capability. So as we shift and those lower end jobs disappear through the use of AI and those automated processes that just keep running and running and running, and it's the same thing day in, day out, they akin themselves to AI very, very well. And it's that for me is the bit of jobs, or the bulk of jobs, that I think that we will end up losing.
Yeah, my view is it's about a massive change of jobs. And I had the analogy given to me, which I thought it made a lot of sense, which if you went to somebody kind of pre-industrial area and they said in the future, 90% of people will not be involved in the production of food, which was the case then. They wouldn't have imagined, they would have said, what will they be doing? What will they be doing? And I think we kind of reach one of those moments in a way that everything is going to be different in the future. I certainly see that within our own work in our own company. Our roles have changed. The things that we can or can't do have changed. And it's taken some adjustment to think about how we should function. But we're all 10 times busier than we used to be. So we're not less busy. This tool has allowed us to be more busy because our expectations have gone up so much in terms of what we can produce. But our ambition is not. Our ambition has increased massively. So there's no reduction in people. There's just change in job. And if I may, just indulge me, Leanne, I know that you mentor many people. What would you be advising younger people to study these days?
I mean, I think for me, like those technology jobs will always be there. I think legal profession's always going to be there with AI or without AI. I think for me, it's not even so much what the youngsters are going to study these days. I think our education system needs to be revamped, and they need to get on board with the pace in which we're changing. So I do a lot with females in STEM, and particularly in education. I think STEM's poorly represented. You're picking like technology as a design subject along with your cooking and your woodwork. It's not even up there with your mathematics, etc. And I think that we've got to shift that whole educational way that we look at technology, and it's in every single thing that we touch. So it's here and it's here to stay. It's moving faster than it's ever moved. So even in our generation, and we're of a certain age, we've seen technology shift massively. That move is going even quicker than ever. So when we're looking at these types of roles, it is encouraging people to have that more analytical thinking. I think the power of what we're doing is changing, and I think that has to stem from education right at a very young age. Also, for me, I think the way that we're dealing with robotics and AI and things like that, our ability to communicate is diminishing in terms of the world that we're living in. But what do we do about it? How are we taking that? So I think there's a lot of change that is happening very fast, and I'm not sure that our people are geared up to cope with that change, and that starts for me right at school.
Great.
Right. So bringing this conversation back to SaaS, I think education and impact on education was a very important aspect of it, definitely touched upon. And I agree with Leanne on how it's impacting the communication overall, especially in the generation that's living in the era of AI and technology, social media as well. Right. So back to SaaS, how do you think AI would impact product strategies for SaaS companies? How do you need to look at your products differently? How do you go about building a new product or enhancing your product, bringing AI into that as well? Leanne, you want to go first?
Yeah, I can do. So I think for me, when we're looking now, even when we're designing solutions, we're looking at solutions, we have to consider the workflow as to what's happening within that solution and where we can utilize the AI type solutions to improve it. And I think it breaks down into several areas. So for me, it is about that, automating the analytics on that. It's about having more productivity in our analytics. So what data is the customer and the user wanting back out? What's that experience that they're wanting? So we probably all use solutions where it's like where AI ask it a question and we're asking a question but it doesn't know the answer, where actually if you're just starting out on the journey, do it where you've got 6 things that you can pick from then, and it sort of like guides you to a conversation. So we've got to make sure that we're doing it in a way and embracing our product and moving it forwards in a way that both delivers value but also delivers that user experience. It's about optimizing resource. So like I've said, those repetitive tasks, let's take them away or make it easier through the use of AI. And it's how we mitigate risk. And when I talk about risk, it's about the data that we're pushing into AI. How are we securing that? How are we making sure that it's performant? How are we making sure that it's optimized? How are we making sure that it's secure? And I think the danger or the risk for me is that we become lazy and we let AI make the decisions for us without really teaching it and without really knowing. And you see that coming through in things that people produce nowadays, and you start like, oh, you can see it's AI. I think there's a high risk there. And I think from a product perspective, it is understanding that real-time performance management. How are we doing it? What's it improving? What workflow is it affecting? What's the quality? Why do we build product in the first place, right? It's to support people and processes. It's to make things faster, better, more efficient, more streamlined.
So
Thanks. Go on, Barrie.
Let me anchor in the future a little bit. So I know the future because I've seen Star Trek, and they have a beautiful explanation of what the future looks like. And if you look at it in Star Trek, almost science fiction, the way that people interact with computers, so they say, computer do this, and computer gets on with it and does it, and magically it's just kind of done. And that's because I think the relationship that humans want with technology should be frictionless. And we shouldn't use our fingers to communicate. Our fingers are not a good communication mechanism. Our voices and our ears and our eyes are better communication mechanisms. And I certainly know from my own experience, what I want is one big nice screen in my study, and I don't want a keyboard or a mouse. And I want to be able to just talk to my computer and things kind of magically happen and they kind of appear. So for me, that's what the future of software is. Future is something that software that the friction disappears. The friction between you and it disappears. I also think that selfishly, those who control the operating systems, i.e. Apple and Microsoft and Google and maybe Samsung, or maybe 1 or 2 other companies, are not going to give up that last communication little bit. So they will be the primary interface, I think, for most software. So software will then need to fit within the operating system, which it does today, but in a different way. So you'll speak to your operating system. My computer will understand me, and it will then communicate with the agentic layers that might exist beneath that, which might be the SaaS applications that I'm using. So there's almost, I think, a complete reinvention of the experiential nature of software, beyond everything that you said, which I agree with, Leanne, in terms of the way that it needs to change, in terms of being predictive and executing in the correct way. And I've not seen that yet. So I can't point at an application or a company that I think is truly delivering on that. I can't see, I haven't seen a piece of software that go, oh my goodness me, that's actually the future of software. I think people are beginning to into it. And you see it in applications like Claude Desktop, which I think are amazing. You know, so really, really advanced AI native applications coming from large language model producing companies. They're probably the closest right now, but they don't meet my Star Trek test just yet.
Yeah, I think between the both of you.
So I was going to say, actually, it's product teams, isn't it, coming out with their own measures about, you know, when they're introducing AI technologies, what are they evaluating that against? And at some point, there's going to have to be like some key metrics that they're using with what's the tangible business value, how are we balancing innovation with ethical business value? Because, you know, we can all jump on this innovation chain, and is it ethical? Is it right for the business? And that whole user experience and the success. So I think there's going to have to be some real clear measures coming into product teams, because clearly by nature of developers, we like the new and shiny things. We want to be like utilizing it. We want to be embedding it into our software, but you know, let's make sure it's for the right thing.
Can I ask a new question, actually, just tied into that, because that's interesting. What role do you think governments should have in the decisions about how software should operate in an appropriate way, in an ethical way, or a truthful way? Do you think any?
From a government perspective, I think there should be some, and I think that comes for me in terms of the whole security and the safety of what we're doing, and that comes back to that data, doesn't it? The availability of data out there. I mean, you know, yes, we've got the World Wide Web. I think AI takes it a little bit further and makes it available. It could impact us in a security way, not just in our companies, but as a country as well. So I think that the whole thing, though, that just goes hand in hand with AI is the whole cybersecurity piece. And I think that there's a big intersection between that. And again, with any technology, I think it comes to three certain things, and that is security, performance, scalability are the three things generally that we're looking at software. And I think that security bit becomes even more paramount.
We've just finished our ISO certification, and you know, nowhere in that process is actually evaluating the results of our software operating ethically or correctly. Yeah. And for me, that was an amiss. You know, as an AI company, that's what we should be scrutinized on. It's one of the really important things. So I imagine and I hope that those regulations actually become stronger.
Yeah, and I think again with anything that's government led, those regulations are so far behind the curve, aren't they? So you look at like ISO 27001, it was upgraded 2 years ago, but it's still way behind the curve. So what we're doing even to manage infrastructure and things is far different from where it is. So I just think that they're going to have to get smarter and quicker and move at that fast pace still. And I think that for me is technology is moving quicker than it's ever moved, and humans are not moving as quick, and we're also not embracing that change quick enough.
Yeah, I think it took over a couple of decades for the right kind of privacy laws to come into picture after internet became present everywhere, right? And I think with AI, the need is going to be going beyond security and privacy. You're going to have a need for accuracy, knowing whether the fact you're being presented is coming from a reliable source and things like that. I think that would require governance, but I think it's going to take a lot of time for governments to catch up. But it does seem like a space that needs to be regulated in my mind.
It's generally big things happen, isn't it, which then create this urgency to catch up. Generally, it works the other way around. It's, you know, the tail wagging the dog, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I
think it's so important, though. I mean, traceability of decision, for example. So, you know, why did I not get credit? If I can ask a bank that question, if an AI has made a decision around that, I should have the full logic of exactly why that decision was made given to me. And I don't think that many people producing AI systems are building that sort of thing in. I don't think that that's happening today.
I agree with Barrie. To gain that trust, first of all. So again, back to that user experience, I think to gain that trust, and like anything, isn't it, to get credibility, you gain the trust first. And I think to do that, you're going to have to see those results and why did you come to that decision and what was it? Otherwise, you're just trusting something that you don't really know. And I think that the way a lot of people adapt to change are going to absolutely have to see that to be able to embrace it.
Yeah, agreed.
No, absolutely. I think explainability is an important pillar for an AI native architecture. I think all AI native businesses or technologies need to think about an introspection kind of interface where they're able to log every single decision being made and the rationale behind them. I don't think that's being done right now effectively.
And actually, it's tied very closely to that testability as well. So if you can explain, you can test, and you can actually understand the reasoning behind it, and you can correct. And you've given me a very good idea. Thank you for this. That should actually exist within a core framework, I'd say, because those two things actually fit hand in hand with each other.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's with most technology projects that I've ever worked on, ever. One of the biggest issues is always data. You look at integration between applications and systems today, data is the issue, right? And now we're saying we're going to rely on this data for everything. So I think that whole data quality and data management has got to increase as well. And we've got to really understand data and architecture and that quality element of it, which a lot of companies bypass. And I'm talking about, big multinationals as well. Data integration becomes an issue due to data quality, and now we're reliant upon it even more so than ever in our AI solutions.
I think you just mentioned another pillar for AI native architecture, a strong data fabric.
We lost you there for a second, Anurag. Leanne, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, for me, I just think we just need to focus on that, how we're collecting the data, how we're cleaning it, again, governance on that data, what are the processes going to be internally when we're creating these solutions to maintain that integrity. And I think it's become stronger than ever, that need for that as well.
Yeah. Can I ask you a question about what you hope will happen in the next couple of years around AI?
I hope that we build trust in AI. I think it's here to stay. It's not going anywhere. I think that we as humans have to build trust in it. I hope that companies allow people to explore, because I think there's a lot of fear there. Fear from companies, fear from the people within those companies about, I'm going to lose my job, it's going to expose our data, we're sharing too much, our competitors will know what we're doing. And I think we have to somehow overcome that fear. And the only way we're going to do it is by trial and error, learning and trying, and allowing people to embrace AI within organizations and see how it can help them.
Yeah, it's so true. I hear sometimes, is it a fad? Is it going to go away? And there's not going to be, AI in the future. And I just think that so fundamentally misses the point of what this technology is and what it's capable of actually doing. And what I hope for the future is that people just embrace it more and more and not fight it. But I do think that has to happen at a government level, actually, because I don't think that governments are ready for the degree of change that's going to come in the employment market and at the rate at which it will happen. And I think that that's going to be a big problem for society, and it might make people really negative about this incredible technology that that can change lives in that way. So I wish there were strong initiatives.
Yeah, I agree. I think if you look at the government, there's lots of use cases for the use of AI within government itself to optimize, isn't it? So, again, how far behind the curve are they in utilizing some of these technologies themselves? And therefore, to own it and put some of that governance out there, they've got to be at the forefront. And I'm not sure they are at the forefront right now.
Can I ask you a question that's been going around my mind quite a bit around objectivity and subjectivity of different language models? So we make a decision around which newspapers we consume, for example, based on our political leanings or our view of the truth. So you could choose a right-wing paper or a left-wing paper, and you enter that certain bubble. And I've been wondering whether language models should be much the same. So I will choose my language model based on the bias that I believe it has, based on how it was created. Or should there be a neutrality that they are trying to assume, and then just trust in people like Elon Musk that they will be neutral and they won't be biased in any which way?
I don't think you can. I think you'll always get bias. I think it takes a long time to remove biases from people, and they're unconscious in us, aren't they? And we've been ingrained or indoctrinated with them for a long time. So I think neutrality will never necessarily exist, but I think that's where it comes down to understanding context of AI. So who am I? What's my persona? What am I trying to do? What am I trying to put out on the other side of it? And it's understanding those personas, and I think building those up in terms of even in organization, users, roles, etc. What does that persona look like, and what is their role? Because even within an organization, you'll have salespeople that have a very different objective to finance people. So the information they're searching, seeking, etc. will be different, and it's not going to be neutral. And I think that I don't think there will ever be such thing as neutrality. I think you'll say, well, actually, this is my political persuasion. Go and gather all the data that you can fill, but give me a viewpoint on this, and then maybe give me an opposing viewpoint as well. But I think that that's where it comes to, if you and I were having a conversation and we had different views, we'd talk about it, our opinions, and we'd try and come up to some conclusion, or go our separate ways and just go, well, let's agree to disagree then. And I don't think that this is any different. I think it's just doing it quicker.
Yeah, correct. Welcome back, Anurag.
You sure you want it, Barrie?
Yeah, sorry about that. I just had an internet issue at my location.
We were enjoying the conversation without you, but you're very welcome back into it. Actually, just picking up on that point, we just finished off that. I see in language models real bias, and the developers like ourselves make a decision about which language model to use at which time. And I actually think that that should be a customer-led decision in many cases. And the only way that they can make that decision is to having some form of guidance as to what the bias actually is. And it's kind of something that doesn't exist really. You can look at the performance nature of a model, and there's many different scales for that. But there's not a kind of objective way of looking at bias and saying this is what the bias is. And I wonder whether things like, for example, Wikipedia as a base could be used, saying, okay, let's assume that that's neutral because it's been edited by lots and lots of people, and it's achieved a sort of a state of neutrality, if you can argue with that. And then you could look at how different language models are from that, for example, which will then give you some indication of bias or some kind of measure of bias. And then you're able to choose which bias you particularly wanting to apply. But I think it's a topic that people don't put a lot of thought into today.
Yeah, I agree. And I think there's two biases there, isn't there? Because there's that personal bias, and then there's that role-based bias based on the personas as well. From an objective perspective, what's your role and your objectives within this organization? And that will change as well. So I think there's lots more complexity to come, and I think we'll learn that as we start adopting in those early stages, and the more detailed we get, we'll start to learn some of those elements.
I see you've already picked up on the bias aspect of the AI solutions as well, right? Talking more about product strategy and product roadmap, how do you think it'll change how you perceive future roadmaps today? Do you think there's going to be a change in the way you look at the features you're building into your products?
Sorry, do you want to go, Leanne?
You go, Barrie.
That's
I've never believed in product roadmaps. I always had such a problem with them. There's something that the longer they are, the more zombie they are in terms of kind of where you think you're going, and that's even stronger now. So I think anything beyond a couple of months is speculation, because things are moving so quickly, and none of us. I mean, every single weekend there's a new announcement about some new amazing kind of thing that fundamentally changes the way that you look at the world. And so you have to kind of like reassess what is now possible because of this thing that's just happened, or this way that people, or the zeitgeist is going in a certain direction. So I think that we have to be so flexible these days in terms of that. What I think should hold steady though is what are you looking to achieve and what are your KPIs? So what is the outcome that you're looking to achieve? And that shouldn't really change. I'm looking to achieve that. So maybe our roadmaps become much more outcome based than they do feature based or anything else that they've always been in the past as technologists.
And I think as well, I think we'll have like more data, won't we? So where does our product roadmap gets defined by our customers theoretically? So based on the help desk calls that we're getting in, I think we'll get better data, we'll get better analytics, we'll understand the user interaction with our platform. So when today we're building a feature, it's like we'll understand better, I think, the value that it's going to bring to the application by the instances that it's going to resolve. And I think that will give us a better model to work with in terms of support desk, customer feedback, customer success, etc. The way people are interacting with our apps, because now a lot of it is going to become more AI native. I think it will give us that data to really drive where improvements need to happen and what our customers are looking for. So I see that, yeah, the data becoming more valuable in that sense. So I think it'll make our roadmaps, we'll be working on more higher quality, higher value elements on our product roadmap rather than gut feel and the customer that shouts the loudest, etc. So I think we'll be a bit more succinct with them. But I agree with Barrie. I think they'll become more fluid as well. So I'm in agreement. Anything pushing out further than 12 weeks is probably a bit irrelevant, and things change. But I think they'll become more fluid, and I think that will be driven by some of the data that we're doing as well. things like testing, etc. I think some of our automated testing and AI in that space is amazing. It pushes things quicker, but again, it makes us be able to do things a lot quicker as well, in terms of we can develop quicker, we can test quicker, we can get it out to the customer quicker. So yeah, interesting how fast it's all moving in that space as well.
Yeah, I mean, if I were to summarize what both of you really said, is instead of looking at a feature roadmap, you really are rolling out not features but hypotheses towards the same outcome. And every time you're just testing a new hypothesis and getting closer to the outcome. So what you're really after is a learning roadmap and not a feature roadmap.
Yeah, exactly right. I also think just the certain roles have changed and certain ways you look at things. So we've always, used epics and stories. We don't use stories anymore. So they're too granular. So we work at an epic level. And we're given epic to an individual or to a small team of people to accomplish. And even myself, I've programmed every single day for the last 470 years. So I'm, kind of been doing it for a long time. But I over a weekend can generate many versions of an epic and then decide which one to actually keep and throw away the rest of them, because it's all been done by AI. That a number of different agents working on a number of different approaches that I could have taken, on my screens, and decide to just throw away vast quantities of work that you would have had some sort of like attachment to before because they were there, but now they're ephemeral. You throw them away and you advance the one that you think is the best. So it's really interesting how as developers things have changed so dramatically. In our team, we discourage all developers from writing code. So we don't need developers to write code. We need developers to be experts at telling AI how to write the code that they're looking to achieve. And that's our core measure.
Let's talk more about your journey, Barrie. So you've used a lot of AI and you've been building AI agents as well. So tell me about how the journey has been. What were the early decisions that you think really mattered? What were some of the surprises? Share some insights.
Sure. I mean, I think the initial surprise was just the shock of it all, because when ChatGPT came out for the first time, my brother told me about it, and I thought, oh, goodness, it's just one of these chat interfaces yet again. And I had always had a stock question that I was always kind of my kind of test to see whether something was really intelligent, and I'd thought about it a long time. And my question was, what would happen if I released a goose inside a driving car? Okay, that was my question, because it's a complex question, because, there's many answers. And ChatGPT kind of came back to me and said, oh, it will probably flap all over the place, which will be incredibly dangerous for you and for the goose, because it might distract your driving, in which you'll hit your crash, and the goose would have a terrible time because it's going to be terrified of all the movement and what was going on. And I was flabbergasted. I thought there was an intelligent answer that came back. And then, of course, I went on from that and turned into a screenplay and, kind of went through, and you suddenly realized that you had this incredible thing. I think the next realization was the logic engine of it. So it wasn't just about language and constructing something, but you actually had a representation of human logic in the way that humans think is represented in a language model. So you can pose a question and ask for the output in a specific format, a JSON format or, structured format, which then means you can take a human problem and turn it into a computer answer without understanding the mechanics of how that might happen, which gives you, kind of human output. The next revelation, and the most incredible one, is how good AI models are at writing code, because code is so vast on the internet. They've been as trained on code as they've been trained on human language, maybe more, I don't know. So bringing it into our work processes to design software happened. And then that turned our development process upside down, because suddenly, we used to do design, build, test, release kind of process. But it became kind of build and then do a little bit of design at the end to try and make it look pretty. And then the next revelation is how good language models are at producing prototypes. So now we use a language model like Claude to create a working prototype that generates the source code that is given to the developers to start their work from. So design has reinserted itself back into the beginning of the process from being pushed to the end of the process. They're now defining, here is a working prototype of the software that you must do. So there's this constant redefinition of role, actually, even within our own team, in terms of what we actually can and can't do. So a number of surprises along the way. The newest one is now that we can use language models to write code within our application that gets run at the time of need. So it's a whole new evolution. It's like a Russian doll now. It's code, language models writing code that will use code that it writes at the time of need. It's ridiculous, actually. I don't know when this Russian doll actually stops.
It's like, because now we can generate that MVP in like, really minutes, can't we? And then that's evolution like of the MVP really, really quickly, so that but I think it's that, people see things and they go with the way that it looks and feels, rather than, written down words, codes, user stories, etc. And I think when it brings it to life, and I think it's bringing it to life much quicker, so therefore we can see, therefore we can change, and we can change it quicker as well. So I think that most people remember visuals, they see visuals, and that's how the majority of human beings learn and retain information. So for me, I think that side of it is great, and it gives us that flexibility to be more agile than ever, to try different things. And again, it's like, let's just try it and see if it works, right? And if it doesn't, we throw it away. We've not wasted 12 weeks of development, or etc. So we're doing it quicker, and it gives us that ability to be able to look, feel, and react.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, so Leanne, a question for you. So if a AI native SaaS company is today rolling out a new product in the market in whatever form, how do they approach their GTM differently? Is there an impact on how you go to market, and is there an impact on maybe the business model itself for them?
I think a bit of both for me. I think it's the change, and I think when you have any change, it's about getting people to go on the journey with you. So I think it's utilizing people to come through that. I think it's about teaching them AI literacy, and I think that's missing. So that's that fear that gets in the way. So I think the change model, like when we very first was bringing technology to the forefront into businesses, and people were like, it's going to do away with my jobs. We get a lot of that now. We've got a lot of trust issues. Well, they can't see the data. They're not looking at the database. They're just looking at a user interface. So I think the change is even more paramount than it ever has been before. And it's really managing that and taking those users on the journey with you. And also, I think the training and the management of that, in terms of teaching that AI literacy, like, what are you asking it? If it's reliant upon your voice, then we're going to have to get really clear in the language that we're using. There always needs to be some sort of like context to what we're doing, and what do we want it, what task are we asking it to perform, and what do we want back out. And I think it's educating around those models of what we're asking and how we're asking it is probably the critical element of the change in embracing AI moving forward. That's my first stop. I always say as well, we don't have to go big, don't go big straight away. Look at things that are really time consuming. Look at workflows where AI will be useful to you in your organization in terms of cost saving, value adding, and try it, right? Do bits, bolt on a bit more, bolt on a bit more. It's not like a gun ho, we've got to do all this tomorrow, but embrace it, do it slowly, start trying it out in your workflow, but don't be scared. And I'd say, you can't be scared, and let some of your team members, particularly those younger teams that have got this, like they're AI ready already, let them try it out, let them embrace it, like really adapt and see where you can change in your organization. But you've got to be open-minded.
Yeah, that's true. And there's also an impact on how you price your products and features now, isn't it?
Yeah, that is, and then you could argue two ways, couldn't you? Because you could go, well, actually, it's enhancing what we do so much more, so therefore you pay more for it. But actually, it's quicker than ever to do it and to give it. So pricing is a typical area. I mean, I'm always like, it's worth what somebody's prepared to pay for it, right? But it's like, what value is your product bringing to the end user and the consumer? Is really where we have. But I think you have to explore, experiment. For me, it's. And remove that myth that it's complex and that there's this nuance there, that it's dangerous and it's going to take it away. That's the bit that we need to educate on.
The pricing one is really interesting, actually. Sorry, I'm not sure if anyone's there.
I am. Everything went.
No, I'm still here. Yeah.
It all went off. Everyone back.
Yeah.
The pricing one is actually really interesting. If you look at it from kind of capital needed to produce software perspective. So when we were selling perpetual licenses to customers, you get all your cash up front. So you build some value, you take it to them, someone would buy it, they'd pay you a whole lot of money, which gave you more money to kind of continue to build software. And if you look at the opposite end of the spectrum right now, which is this outcome-based pricing, so we'll only pay on the actual outcome achieved, very difficult for a small company to fund that. So you've got to be a very, very large company and have the sufficient capital base to actually get to the perspective where your software is good enough for generating enough outcomes to produce the capital you need in the beginning to produce the software. So I do worry about that. I worry about pricing structures kind of keeping startups out the market, and the capital structures needed to produce software subsequently changing as well.
And I suppose that's investors as well, isn't it? Getting on board and looking at that risk profile and how are they going to invest more into those early stage companies, but pre high levels of revenue as well. So that whole investment landscape will change by the way that we're then going to adapt our pricing to AI.
Yeah.
Well, you would expect with good AI coding assistants, you'd be able to ship things faster at a lower cost anyways, right? So the investor's risk profile is lowered and they're able to probably invest into more smaller startups with the smaller amounts and, hedge their bets a little bit.
That is true, but there are now 10 times more startups starting up on the same idea in a very short amount of time. So the competition space has changed very dramatically as well. So all of these things would be wonderful if, wonderful for an individual if only that individual had it, but everyone's got it. So
Yes.
the barrier to entry has reduced so very, very dramatically as well. And I worry, I guess my biggest fear is that only the large companies eventually survive. And, there has to be some way that the startup ecosystem can continue. Because what you see right now, Y Combinator's got this drive to get to the first unicorn with less than 10 staff inside an organization, and someone's going to do that. That's going to happen. Someone's got some brand new idea, and they're going to have 5 or 6 people, and they're going to be generating worth more than $1 billion. But it's I wonder where that leaves the rest of the startup ecosystem.
I believe, Barrie, the competition. See, I don't necessarily agree that only the big ones would outlast everybody else. I feel there's an opportunity to invent or innovate in the business model space, right?
Yeah.
I will look at what Claude has done and what OpenAI has done. The way they're targeted enterprises, but by is really targeting individuals and making the individual licenses so inexpensive that they made their way into businesses and enterprise licenses, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the prosumer segment is what's come up now, right? Similarly, I think every SaaS would need to come up with the right business model for their customer, for them to actually stand out and sustain.
Yeah, I have a slightly orthogonal view to that, which is I think that the language models are coming for us. So I think that the language models themselves are going to take on more and more end user software function. And my prediction is within, I don't know, within 6 months or a year, one of the language models will take on a big task like CRM, and they'll say, you don't need a CRM system anymore. You just use us. We'll do everything for you. And I think eventually you can have a language model. You can say, I want to open a pizza restaurant. So I'd like you to do my accounting, my advertising, my posting, my ordering, my menus, my everything, and produce my website. And let me know if you need me. Okay. And don't forget to file my tax return. So you could describe to software that, where right now that's a whole lot of different software packages and innovation needed from different people, I think could be done by a company like an OpenAI or an Anthropic or one of those large organizations. And once they've done it once, they can then cookie cutter that out throughout the rest of the world. So we're in danger in many ways of software becoming these great big monolithic systems. And then, I wonder about what the software profession is in that set. I know there's a bit of a doomsday scenario, but there's, I think, a strong possibility of that.
In my view, because I think we'll have specific SaaS solutions still for AI SaaS solutions for the to get that depth of understanding and complexity within them. But I think that there will be further deeper integration through AI. So when it comes to pricing, we went from enterprise pricing to a lot of subscription pricing, and maybe then it becomes user-based pricing based on numbers of API calls or things like that. So I have a different view. So I don't think we will end up with these monolithics, because I think that even when we talk about these large language models, it's that information has to come from the intelligence that exists within people, processes today, applications today. So whilst we can use AI and it can go and scrape from everything, I think that's okay maybe for early stage businesses that have little depth that they want to go to. But I think once we start getting into that depth of an organization, I don't believe it will be like that. And I think pricing even today, you know, we have different pricing models today out there within our businesses. I think value-based pricing is probably the way that it will go ultimately. I think businesses have always been reluctant to do value-based pricing because it's hard to prove when the value's been generated, right? And when it's split across multiple processes, where do you akin the value chain? So I think that it will either go tiered-based pricing, so you've got your SaaS and then your bolt-ons of AI functionality potentially, or it'll be user-based pricing with this many API calls, and you'll have blocks. So it'll be a bit like subscription, but user-based. That's my view. I don't know, obviously.
Well,
I tend to agree with Leanne.
Yeah.
I tend to agree with Leanne, and I think a lot of the SaaS businesses who would have to go behind the presentation of LLMs, right? So they have to become the MCP servers. They have to become the agents behind the interface to actually realize the value, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's where the reinvention may come as well. So it will become an ecosystem rather than a monolith in my mind, Barrie.
Yeah.
Well, I hope that you're both right. I honestly do.
And I think, again, it comes back to the use cases, doesn't it? Because, you know, when we talk about AI and native products, etc., then I think, you know, there's going to be somewhere it's common and it's just out there for the whole universe to use. And there'll be some that are just built specifically for companies and organizations that are using their own applications, data, etc., and it's contained within. So I think that, you know, even SaaS companies that I know, you know, they're building their own models. Well, models already exist out there, so why not use them? But they're very specific to their use cases. So it is just an extension of their product. So it's like, here's my product, my SaaS product. Now I'm going to integrate this part of SaaS, of AI, and then I'm going to put this bit in that's an AI. So they're like bolt-on modules fundamentally, aren't they? Which then just comes to your normal still subscription pricing with add-ons. So who knows? Who knows?
It's true. It's true. Right. I think it's been a great discussion. So I've got just one last question for the both of you. If you just complete this sentence, if I were building something new today, I'd focus on what? Leanne, you want to take that up first?
If I was building something new today, I would focus on the real value I can now add to a user to make them so successful in their job.
For me, it's about the humanization of software. So I'd be very proud to create software that felt truly human and had empathy and understood the user it was dealing with, and help them fulfill the tasks that they're looking to achieve.
The Star Trek test. Well, thank you. I think that's quite valuable. So thanks a lot to both of you for your time. It's been a great discussion. I'm sure the audience has enjoyed it as much as I have as well. Right? We should get back together for more such discussions. Right?
Wonderful.
For the audience, we're going to have subsequent sessions which are going to be around how do we build AI agents and what about AI native GTM, right? So follow us and join us for further sessions. Thank you, Leanne. Thank you, Barrie.
Thanks
Thank
a lot.
you, much appreciated. Thank you.
Take care.